Good morning everyone. I am Tanushri Dalai. Today I am going to teach you your theory 4 paper which name is Engineering Mechanics. So today we will start with your chapter 3 which name is Friction. So first of all you need to know what do you mean by friction and what are its causes. So first of all, friction is a force between two surfaces that are sliding or trying to slide across one another. For example, when you try to push a toy car along the floor. So you can see this is your toy car, and due to the force applied, it will move. And the friction always happen at the contact surface here, which is always opposite to the motion of the body. So friction is always works in the direction opposite from the direction of the object. It always parallel to the plane of contact. When a body slide or tends to slide on a surface on which it is resting, a resisting force opposing the motion that is produced at the contact surface. This resisting force is generally known as friction force or simply friction. Next one is causes of friction. So, the main cause of friction is the interlocking of minute projections on the surfaces which oppose the relative motion. So you can see this one is the contact surface and these are the projection of surface. And here the upper one is the object. So the amount of friction depends on the materials from which the two surfaces are made. So higher will be the rougher surface, more will be the friction, because due to the uneven surface, the more friction is produced. Frictional force. So when an external force is applied to a body to move it over the surface of another body, an opposing force comes into play along the common surface of contact of the two bodies. This opposing force is known as frictional resistance or friction. Since friction is nothing but one kind of force, whose unit is same as per the force, that is Newton or kilonewton. So now comes to types of friction. So in general, the friction is basically two types. First one is dry friction. Second one is fluid friction. And next, dry friction is again subdivided into two types. One is static friction and another is dynamic friction. Again, the dynamic friction is subdivided into two types. One is sliding friction and another is rolling friction. Now, the static friction means the friction experienced by a body when it is at rest. That is known as static friction. So we know that static means the rest condition. So if the body is in the rest and at that time whatever the friction experienced or produced at the surface of contact without moving the body, that friction is known as static friction. Then comes to dynamic friction. So it is totally opposite of the static friction. That means the friction experienced by a body when it is in motion, that friction is known as dynamic friction. As we know that the dynamic friction is two types. One is sliding and another is rolling. So first of all, sliding friction. Here the friction experienced by a body when it slides over another body, and that time whatever the friction is produced, that is known as sliding friction. Then comes to rolling friction. So friction experienced by the body when it rolls over another. So for the rolling friction, you must take example of cylinder or circular type sections. So due to the rolling nature on the ground, whatever the friction experienced at the point of contact of surface, that friction is known as rolling friction. Then comes to fluid friction. So as per the name fluid, we know that the contact surface must be liquid or gas. That means when a body moves through a fluid, that may be liquid or gas substances, it experiences an opposing force. This opposing force offered by the fluid is called as fluid friction. Now comes to limiting friction. So here limiting means the maximum range of the friction. Whenever the body is subjected to some forcing, so the maximum friction force that can be developed at the contact surface when body is just on the point of moving is known as limiting force of friction. So this maximum value of frictional force which comes to play when a body just begins to slide over the surface of the another body, that is known as limiting friction. So you can see here, this is your contact surface and over it, this one is your object. And as you know, the weight of the object always directed towards downward, and due to this downward loading system, there is equal and opposite reaction in the opposite side, that means at the upward side, which is known as normal reaction force. And at the point of contact surface, due to the force, the movement of the body is at the right side, and we know that the frictional force is always produced in this surface, which is always opposite to the movement of the body. So this is the free body diagram of the all reactions, weight, limiting friction and movement. Now comes to angle of friction. The angle between normal reaction and resultant force is known as angle of friction. So it is also known as limiting angle of friction. So you can see this is the contact surface, or you can say the ground surface on which the body is placed, and at the downward direction here W is acting. At the upward direction, this one is the normal reaction, and here this one is your movement of the body or the applying force, and opposite direction here the limiting friction is acting, and the resultant force we taken as in between limiting friction and normal reaction, and the angle between this resultant force with the normal reaction is theta. So the angle between this normal reaction and the resultant force, which is provided in between normal reaction and limiting friction, that ratio is known as the angle of friction. So here the tan theta is equal to F by A, where the F is limiting friction or friction and the A is normal reaction of the body. Now comes to angle of repose. So here angle of repose reduced according to the increasing in angle of inclined surface. That means with the increase in angle of the inclined surface, the maximum angle at which body starts sliding down is called angle of friction. So you can see, if this is our ground surface and this OB is the sliding surface or inclined surface, so according to the increase of this angle which is in between ground to the inclined surface, the angle of repose is increased. So as per the body, this one is the weight of the body and this upward direction is the normal reaction to the weight of the body, and here by resolving these two forces we have this one is the W sin phi and this vertical one is the W cos phi. So the angle between the W cos phi and the weight of the body here is phi, and angle of repose is always denoted as phi. So today this much. We will continue from this in the next class. Thank you.